Hello, this is Erdek coming to you with a video how to set up Wurm clusters. So there is this myth around that Wurm clustering is hard to do, and if you do not do it often, it can be quite convoluted, but once you did it, you should be perfectly fine, and then you forget about it after 2 years, and then again it's fiddling. So this video fulfills the purpose of being here as my personal reminder of how I set up clusters, but also for you to learn how to do it, because it shouldn't be that hard. But sometimes it is just weird how to do stuff, and there is stuff bound to go wrong here. But anyway, yeah, don't be scared. it's not hard, it's just sometimes weird. So I have here two fresh, almost fresh Wurm installs. These are copies of my server where I have nothing set up except I patched the game. So I expect from you that you know your way around Wurm modding and probably already running a server and basically just want to add in another map or so. So you should have a patched server launcher, and this is what we are using. So for the login server, let's just take a look at it. All right. So coming from a clean install, you always start with two available game versions, I guess. It's Adventure and Creative. And making a new login server, you go to Creative. Then you say, okay, I want a new creative game version, and we call that login server. Then we make a copy. And you see the folder structure changed here. And now you can move that. And now we are gonna work with that. So basically we leave these base game editions in peace, so that there is basically clean versions available that we can copy in case something goes wrong. Okay, now a very quick run through how to set up the local server. It shouldn't be too hard, but just in case you are coming from a point where you want to run your own Wurm server and want to run multiple maps. Yeah. Okay, so this is our login server. So we called it just login server, just like the profile name, I guess. We untick the auto port forward. This is very important. Otherwise, Wurm is gonna screw you up quite literally. You can keep these settings as you want. This is server ID 19999. But since this is the login server, I just always put this to 1. And the internal IP address is 127.0.0.1, basically a loopback address, looping back to your machine. And the port 40,000 is standard. I'll keep it as is. And here we also have RMI Registration Ports and RMI Port. So for this, it is 7221 and 7120. So these are the standard ports from which we are starting. These have to be set. And the Steam query port is 27016. For other Steam games, it's sometimes a 27015 or higher up. So the Steam query range is, I think, 27015 to 27030. So you can technically use all of those, but Wurm basically uses 27016 out of the box, and for your login server, I recommend you keep that setting. Of course, you have to open all of these ports, not the internal IP port, because this is just for communication between the servers, but the RMI port, so this one and this one, and the Steam query ports have to be opened as an outbound rule on your server, so it can communicate. And some of these ports have to be inbound rules and have to be open in your firewall and inbound rules, but not the RMI ports. Don't open them to the net. It's not that somebody can hack your PC, but people can hack into your Wurm server with RMI commands. So yeah, keep that in mind. But if you are able to admin a server, I am sure you are able to also manage your firewall. So yeah, these are the basic settings. This is all that we need for now on, and I'll just hit save, updated that accordingly, and close it down, and just open back up and see if the settings persisted. Yep, that looks good. And I already went ahead and opened these ports in my firewall. So let's see here. I'm just gonna start the server. Start my client. And I've got a login server here. All right, and I spawned. And I have nothing except the starter gear on me. So my player is not a GM or anything. Just normal player situation here. Okay, so my login server basically works. Okay, now, depending if the GUI likes you or not, this can be successful or not. But I'll show you later tools how to guarantee that everything is matching up. But now we are going to create our cluster server. I'll just shut this down gracefully and then go back, run the launcher again so I can look at stuff and compare it if needed. I move over to my cluster and open the Wurm server launcher. But it doesn't open. Okay, to take the other one. Doesn't open. Why? Because we already have a server launcher running and it's a Steam application. So yeah, that means Steam says, hey, that's already open. What are you doing? But don't be worried. You can get yourself a new GUI by running the modlauncher.bat. Just run that. And then you can see here we have our GUI here. So I'll just bring up the login server that we did before. And we are going to do the same here. So go creative, make a copy of that. This is now cluster, so I copy that. And then I'm going to select cluster and go to local server. I'll just call it cluster. So this is a single machine setup. So now you can see it has the same IP address. If you are using two different IP addresses, now you have to put in here the IP address of the other server. But I have running it on one and the same server machine. So this is basically for a single machine setup. But you cannot use the same port. So I up that port. So in my firewall, I opened 3724 and up to 3730. So if I want to do 6 maps, I can do that. Can be a home server, doesn't matter for our purpose today. And again, you see here, you have the server ID 1999. But here, this is a cluster. So I'm going to set it to server ID 2. And also just raise all the IP addresses and ports by 1. Because those are already used on the main server, right? Just up them by 1. For this, it doesn't matter too much because actually this loops back to your own system, but it's good to keep track. And I also think you have to up this because this is then already in use, even though it goes back to your PC. Networking stuff and so. And you all can also see here, now this is back to 0, but we'll talk about that later. I'll put the information in the description as well, but just for the purposes here, this was 7221 and this was 7120. All right, in here I'll then put 7121 and 722. Oh, wrong direction, sorry. 7222 and 7121. So this, I added 1 to this and I added 1 to this. This is my cluster, so it's not a login server. So I'm gonna save this and save this. Switch tabs and see, yeah, still there, fine. All right, so technically this is now a cluster server which I cannot launch because it doesn't have a login server. So we can try it. That's weird. Okay then. Oh right, yeah, that doesn't work. Need to use this. Who knows? Maybe it has a server neighbor or something like that. But anyway, moving on. Now we are going to set up server neighbors. So again, this is the same tab. And now again, these two have to talk to each other. So you basically just exchange the information you have on the local server tab and carry it over to the server neighbors. So this, we have to create a new one. And this is going to be cluster with the ID of 2. That stays the same. This port goes up by 1, right? Here. This goes up by 1. This goes up by 1. This is 7222. This is 7121. And it is, oh wait, it is not the login server, but it is the home server, has kingdom of 4. I think for the neighbors it doesn't matter too much, but you know, just carry over the settings and then you hit save. And that went well, I think. And then you can also enable travel if you want. So you can see here's cluster is there, can enable travel. Don't have to. If you don't enable travel here for your cluster, then it is not reachable by boat, but you can still put up these portals, which you then can configure to transport players to the other server, which is a nice tool. Basically make some realm for the gods or something that you cannot reach with a boat, but hey, you can teleport to it. Okay, but for our purposes, we are going to do it the cluster on the south border of our login server. So I'm going to save that. And I also make myself GM while I'm at it. Okay, cool. Then I go back to my local server stuff that I have here and put that in to a new server neighbor here, which is called LoginServer with the ID of 1 without, did I untick that? Yep. Without auto port forwarding on 3724 1. So basically these fields are just 40k filled in from the local server, so copied over basically. 7221 7120. This is the login server and the home kingdom is 4. And I'm gonna save that. Boop. And we have here the login server with all that, and again, back here, we did on the south border the cluster. So on the cluster, if you travel north, you can do the login server. You can't do it south again, so then people would have go do the round trip. So it would be a two half spheres somehow put together. But I tend to like it put logically. Okay, so that is the basic setup, but because you saw earlier when I restarted the GUI, which will later also kick us in the ass, it refilled these fields with zeros. So we will have to do something about that. For the time being, I'm just checking if everything matches and then close that down. Now, there is a useful tool that many of you maybe already know. That is the DB browser for SQLite. So, for example, this one. This is unfortunately a Mac screenshot. Not judging here, but you know, on Windows looks different. But this is a tool most of server admins use to check some entries in the database, maybe track an item down, or move an item, or move a player, or an animal if it's stuck. So most of you probably know this tool. I'll put the download link into the description as well. I already downloaded the tool. And now we're gonna open our database. Open database. Let's see. Go to LoginServer. Go to this yourServerName. So LoginServer, SQLite, and then Wurm login DB. And then it's under servers, browse table. And now we check if the settings are all correct. So we have here the server ID 1 is the login server with a spawn point, and we have the cluster. Don't worry about those, because this is just the setting for the server name, where you can leave those blank. So what's more important is that the networking matches up. Okay, so I have the intra-server addresses here, the intra-server ports, they are different, which is good. The external ports are different, which is good. And we have the RMI ports here, so this got up by 1, this got up by 1, this is also good. And the login server has a map name, which is good. Doesn't need one particularly, but if you're using the server map mode, you will have to give it a map name so it can make a map file. Okay, this looks good. We can also check server neighbors here. And our server login server has the ID 1. It has a neighbor server which has the ID 2, and the direction is south. So this is how you read that table. Okay, that seems to check out for the login server. Let's also take a look at our cluster. Again, cluster, SQLite, Wurm login. Servers. Okay, now first row. This is not the ID, it's just the first row. We have the server with the ID 2, that is the cluster, which is using this address on this intra port. The other is the one of the other, so you not only have to make sure these two are different, but they also have to match the previous table. Basically, these entries here are just flipped from the table you've seen before. Yep, the ports match up. And that's why you open or just add one to the port. And I also do have a Excel file where I keep all my ports in, and basically if I drag down the table, I can also calculate the next one. So yeah, it helps. So if this is a one-time thing for you, you just have to make sure it works once, then everything is nice. And you see here the local flag is basically for this cluster. This table means this is the server here on this machine. Okay, that matches up the settings we had before. This has a map name, that's cool. This won't have a map name, the same reason as before. It also has no spawn point because it is just a neighbor. So we can look into neighbors. Our server has the ID 2, it has a neighbor with the ID 1, the direction is north. Okay, that also checks out. Technically, if we are not running into any issues, this is gonna be enough for the networking setup. But there is one thing you will have to do. The servers communicate across the RMI ports. So, well, you have to allow the game to communicate through the RMI ports, and normally it doesn't, because if you have just one map, you don't need that. So you go inside your server's name folder, and you'll find the Wurm Mini. And down there you have the do not enable section, and you add a line, use incoming RMI equals true. This is what enables this server to handle RMI commands and talk to the other server as well. Keep in mind though, that also now finally makes it so that somebody, if you open your RMI port to the internet, that they could technically issue commands to the server without even being logged in. So most of the RMI commands use the admin canword and or the intra-server canword that you saw. Sorry, password. Switching from German is hard. Using the intra-server password. So that has to be known to the hacker. So there is a level of security, especially if you use multi-machine setups. You have to open the RMI port for incoming and outgoing routes. So yeah, just keep safe and do backups often. But you will need this line so servers can communicate. Okay, go back to the login server, because here we have to do the same. Wurm Mini, add this line, and now we are ready to test. As you already saw, when we go back, I mean, we can go back to the GUI here. You can see here, the settings are still all the same, but if you launch through the GUI sometimes, and quite often, likes to reset these settings to 0 or whatever. You saw it before. So rather not launch it through the GUI, but instead launch it via the bat file, and I show you how you can do that very simply. You have this modlauncher.bat, which normally also just brings up a GUI, right? But if you make a shortcut of it, you can go to properties and then just say start equals, we are on the login server, so login server, right? Needs to be the name of the folder where the server files are in. And now if I launch that, it crashes. Let's see why. Oh, I think I know why. Oh, do I know why? Well, let's look at the log. Well, that has been inconclusive, to say the least, and I should maybe start closing stuff on my Notepad++. Let me just try again. No, something is wrong there. We run the patched exe. Just see. Settings still there. Yeah, settings are still there. It's a login server, all right. Let me just start that here. That launched just fine. Did I fuck up my command? Let's see. Is the settings, are they still there? Yeah, that's good. Okay, let's see on our this is correct though. Did I start? Maybe it doesn't like the spaces. Well, yeah, okay. It didn't like the spaces. All right. Okay, so now our login server is up. Nothing much happened here. And if I did everything right, we can now also boot up the cluster. Again, without the GUI. Oops, don't need that. Here, I already had a shortcut here from the server files when I copied them, but I'm gonna delete them just to make sure I actually launch in the right settings. So this is now cluster, right? Cluster, the file that we created previously, and I'm gonna launch that. Let's see what happens. I'm gonna pull that bigger a little bit. Okay, connected. And now we wait. And this is the message you want to see. You see here, you got the template sent from server number 1, and it says model creature golem has this ID. Because if you have mods, then both of the servers should also use the same ID. So again, like if you have alchemy on the mixture here has this ID, but on the cluster it has a different ID. When you travel to the cluster, you have a different item in your inventory, which is bad. Let's also take a look here on our login server, and you can see here, okay, it sent something to server number 2, model creature golem 214. So they both communicated, and they also said, hey, I've got one player. So the login server says, hey, I've got one player, the player we created previously, and then also communicates its kingdoms and flags and stuff. And one important message you're gonna look out for is login server is now available. I always recommend bringing up the login server first. Shouldn't matter too much because the servers try to communicate, and if it fails, they try again after a couple minutes or so. So yeah, this should say cluster is now available. Yep. And I don't see any errors or something like that. Sometimes you get a connection refused or something like that. That just means you might need to open your firewall ports. Okay, well then let's reconnect. I do now have a GM, should, technically. And also, if you have your cluster, you can also, let's try a new character here. Wurm is smart about that. It says here, you need to connect to the login server. I can't do that for you. Okay. So I quit my game. Now, if I use an existing character here and connect to the cluster which didn't exist before, let's see what it says. You need to connect to login server. So the login server is the login server is the login server. So always go there. Later, when you travel between servers and know that you are with your character on the cluster, you can actually also directly connect to the cluster. Oh yeah, I didn't finish the tutorial, right? Okay. Right, oh, well, that is because my spawn is 000, right? But I can fly around. Now I have even a wand here. And I have that problem now that I am on the server border. But anyway, I activate the wand, right click the ground, and then I can say specials, transfer south. Oh, You transfer to cluster, and oh, there are now 2 players on Wurm. That's me and me, but anyway, I am on my cluster. Oh, there is the lens, so this is where I need to go, and now I swam over to my other cluster, to the login server basically. It also tells you where you go. At least it says welcome back, and you're now on the login server. So I tried to swim a little bit away, but let's go back. I'm just gonna teleport me a little bit. So we are south. So let's say Y50. Oh no, that's not right. 2000, I guess. And this is the middle of the map, I guess. So I'm just gonna teleport myself there. Boop. And maybe I'm just gonna create a little dock here. I mean the ship, of course, with a good quality. And of course, fantastic. And I'll drop that. Under the water. Okay, and there we have our beautiful vessel. And I'm gonna embark. Ooh. Oh, unfortunately, I'm not smart enough to do that. So I'm gonna learn a little mind logic, I guess. Boom. Okay. There we go. And now I'm the flying Dutchman. You think you can fly? Yeah, you can fly with your boat. Anyway, I want to drive that boat to the server just so you can see the travel also works. So if you keep going in this direction, you will end up on cluster. Okay, this is where I want to end up. Wind's not too good here, but the 99 QL helps. You get multiple warnings. And there we are. Unfortunately, you dismount, but I think this is vanilla Wurm. Oh, hey, don't leave without me here. I need you. Alright, there we go. And then I can... Oh, there's actually landmass here. Well, and as you can see, I'm coming in from the north border here. Straight at the white light altar as well. So I'm traveling more to the east here, but I'm coming in from north. When you go back to the server border, you can also actually see that it's there. No, I'm also flying, by the way. Flying Dutchman again. It's just faster travel. At least I thought the server border was showing up. But not on this live map. Sometimes you can see it because it's the other shade of blue, but maybe... Oh, there it is. Also on the flat view you cannot really see it, but on the shaded one you can see a little bit further, and there's your server border. Okay, let's go back. Okay. Am I now flying? I don't have my boat under control here. Well... I'm sorry. I'm not. I think now we are going in the right direction. Is the game a little bit confused as how the boat is currently moving? It seems like it. The rotation is not quite right. Yep. Okay. Maybe my GM magics have broken this wonderful cock. Okay, no. Oh. Okay. Right. So this is... it thinks I'm still on it. This is server travel and server clusters in Wurm Unlimited. Here you can see the server world. See that? Actually, can I plot cores? Oh yeah, I can. Okay, so if travel is enabled and you do plot cores, then I guess you can use any border. I forgot about that mechanic. But anyway, as you can see, we come from the south border now, so we are at the black light. And on the cluster, we were coming in from the south at the north border, being at the white light. So that is also a good way you can maybe debug your clustering. But yeah, this is how you cluster in Wurm Unlimited. To be honest, it took me a few tries before recording that video, and I also had to ask for help because my 2 years came around of not knowing how to, or forgetting about how to cluster. So thank you, Saib Shikama and all the other guys for the inputs, but this just means it's all the more important to bring out a video about that. So yeah, I hope this video helped you in your cluster shenanigans. Again, it looks scary, it's just complicated, but it is doable. So if you have any questions, you can hit up people in the Wurm modding Discord at any time. I'll post the link down below as well. And yeah, basically there's just one rule. Open your launcher. Maybe open 2 launchers. You can put them side by side if you know the trick. And then just make sure that your settings match. In the local server tab as well as in the server neighbors tab. So you see that everything checks up. So this is the local server cluster, and this needs to be the same settings. And again, don't forget about your firewall. Open the necessary ports, and you might need to port forward on your router. I'm having a Wurm server on a virtual server that I rent, so they already automatically port forward there. Keep in mind, this is just my system, but again, if you have any questions, drop into the Discord, put a comment below, and I'm sure we can figure something out. But most of my errors doing clusters have been, there was one setting that wasn't the exact same as in the other server. So yeah, just make sure, maybe take notes, maybe put it in Excel so you can be extra sure, and everything will be fine. All right, have a nice day, and yeah, keep on warming.